into the ring, the bell's about to chime. Turnbuckle Talk, we're here to shine. Flagship on the airwaves, leading the pack. Breaking news reviews, we've got your back. From the squared circle to the backstage news, we bring stories that you can't refuse. Turnbuckle Talk, the voice of the fight. Every slam, every suplex, every highlight. Tune in weekly, don't miss a beat. For the latest in wrestling, we bring the heat. From AEW to WWE, we cover it all from A to Z. Interviews, insights, and match reviews. If it's wrestling news, we've got the clues. From the squared circle to the backstage news, we bring the stories that you can't refuse. Turnbuckle Talk, the voice of the fight. Every slam, every suplex, every highlight. Tune in weekly, don't miss a beat. For the latest in wrestling, we bring the heat.
Happy birthday, Canada. That's right. Turnbuckle Talk and Turnbuckle Studios, alongside the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program, are all Canadian. And today is July 1st. And since it is July 1st, we are bringing a full circle for Canada. Turnbuckle Talk, episode number 430, where we're going to be talking about just Canadian professional wrestling today. Where it started, what companies it started with, where it's kind of come from there, some of the notable stars, and even some of the amazing matches throughout history that have happened in Canada. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about some of our favorite Canadian wrestlers and their matches as well. I am joined alongside Chris Parrish and OMD. Mr. Best is off on assignment right now. He has got some things that he has to do and is dealing with, and we wish him the best in those endeavors right now. He's not gone. He's going to be back hopefully next week. Guys, this is kind of exciting for us, especially as Canadians and a Canadian professional wrestling podcast. A professor, Turnbuckle Studios, a Canadian company, just to be able to celebrate Canada today.
Yeah, it's pretty wonderful what the Canadian scene is now today. And just to think back of kind of where it began, it's kind of a nice little tribute because we know remembering where we came from, that's a Canadian thing to do. Mm-hmm. It always takes you back to those commercials that you would see where it's the heritage, right? Yeah. So a good little throwback to, what made us the maple leaf that we are today.
A maple leaf right there. As many of you know, and if you don't know, I was known as the Extreme Canadian Carl Carafel within my professional wrestling career. And I was born here, raised here, been here my entire life, and I love everything having to do with Canada. OMD, I know the same for you, but you've been to some other places as well. The majority of your life has been in Canada, but other places
majority of my life. I'm born and raised here in Sault Ste. Marie, just like you.
Yep.
Yes, I lived a year and a half in Australia as a child growing up. And so, I've gotten to experience different cultures. I know we love to travel, whether it is for wrestling or other
music
events. And the cultures, the community in there, it is all the same, nothing but love. And to a family.
Yeah. Well, glitchy going on there, but it's all good.
See, Chris Best is here.
That's right. That's right. Mr. Parrish, your roots as well, to my understanding, are all Canadian. And it's absolutely fantastic that Canada has such a large growing up within the professional wrestling business. I did a little bit of research, and it took me by surprise, as I think it might take some of you by surprise as well, that a company called Maple Leaf Wrestling. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Maple Leaf Wrestling was founded in 1930 and was based in Toronto. They were called the Queensberry Athletic Club initially, but after a while, they became Maple Leaf Wrestling. They became a territory with the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, and then later aligned with the WWF, the World Wrestling Federation, before being acquired by them back in 1984. I was just 3 years old back then. I didn't know that it all technically started in Canada with Maple Leaf Wrestling.
Right. This is very, very intriguing. And I mean, we know that, this current iteration that we have of Maple Leaf Pro has been doing a lot of throwbacks and tributes to the founding fathers in the original Maple Leaf Wrestling.
Right.
And that is a credit to their current owner, Scott D'Amour, who wants to recognize the history of Canadian wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, my real introduction to Canadian wrestling, besides the Canadian wrestlers who grace our screens for the last 20 years on WWE, WCW, was really hearing about Stampede Wrestling out of Alberta, near and dear to Chris Parrish's heart.
Yeah, like those are my early memories. Like Carl, you talked about 1984 and how you were 3. Well, to make you feel a little old, I wasn't even born then. So, when my first Canadian welcome to pro wrestling definitely was Stampede Pro Wrestling, and then later the local scene. Just to see the who's who that has graced the stage from Stampede Wrestling and became icons to today. And then to know that before them, it was, guys like Stu Hart, who really absolutely revolutionized what pro wrestling is in this country. I think an absolute icon he was. And then to go back to that Maple Leaf Wrestling, and OMD, you mentioned about the Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling now, just to see that Canadian heritage still fly high in a wrestling ring in 2025, it's definitely a proudful thing to see from a Canadian wrestling fan, let alone somebody who still does compete from time to time in wrestling. Mm-hmm. It's cool to see how respected that Maple Leaf is in the business, and just to see what Canada has brought to the wrestling world. I think it's very humbling to know that you're a part of such a rich culture. And I know that I'm graced by a guy named Vance Nevada to be a part of a book that he wrote where he does document a lot of the pro wrestling in Canada and the wrestling scenes. And it's a thick book. There's a lot to go in, and you'll be surprised by just some of the names that you do get to read in there.
Basser, it is always good to have you join us. I appreciate you. Burnt or not, brother. We love you, and we thank you so much for joining in. If you are here and you're watching and you want to join in the conversation, put your comment in there. We do read them. We interact with each and every one of you because, well, that's the Canadian thing to do, I guess. Eh?
Yeah. Now it appears on our screen.
Yes, it does. Yes. Right down there in the bottom corner proves that we actually have messages that come through.
It's a little bit of all right, eh?
Yeah, it is. It is. I want to go through just a short, quick list here of promotions that were Canadian that started out back in the early days, the NWA territory days. We're looking at Stampede Wrestling from Alberta, Maple Leaf Wrestling from Ontario, Grand Prix Wrestling, which was in New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Nova Scotia in that area. You had another Grand Prix Wrestling in Quebec, Lutte Internationale in Quebec as well. You had the All-Stars in British Columbia and Northland Wrestling Enterprises in Ontario. Those were all NWA territory companies for the first little while. And then we make our way to nowadays, where we've got companies like Border City Wrestling, Elite Canadian Championship Wrestling, Canadian Wrestling's Elite, High Impact Wrestling, the International Wrestling Syndicate, the NCW, Northern Championship Wrestling, Femme Fatales, and even Smash Wrestling, all coming from different parts of Canada. I love it. I can't go through the entire list. I did take a look to see, a list of independent promotions in Canada. We could probably spend the next half an hour just reading through all of those.
Right. I think we should give a shout out to our friend Frank, aka Chris Thorne, and the Canadian Wrestling Federation out of Toronto, St. Catharines area, I do believe.
Mm-hmm.
And our friend Rip Impact with
Right.
Hamilton Pro.
Right.
And let's not even now forget that a company like TNA as Impact, they're owned by Anthem. So they're even kind of a home to a Canadian home base as well in a weird kind of way. But if we're staying with local, I would get in a lot of trouble if I personally don't give a little shout out to the Real Canadian Wrestling. Where you could find me this Saturday at Norwood Legion, but that's nor here nor there. I know Basser's a big PPW guy in the Saskatchewan area. So
Prairie Pro,
there's 2 PPWs in Canada because sometimes we like to do the same thing.
Again, it's just a nice thing for us to do.
Yeah.
Inclusivity, right?
I mean, it's why the Toonie's so cool, because there's a little mini loony inside of it, right?
That's right. Lastly, when it comes to companies within Canada that I want to give a shout out to as well, is a company that is still fairly new, but has done some amazing things, especially out in your area, Chris, and Love Pro Wrestling. Spencer and the gang over there have been doing amazing things, putting on such great shows that are getting huge notoriety. And I mean, so good for them over there. Love Pro Wrestling. Check them out as well. There's some amazing people that are over there too. We could, like I said, go on and on and on about just promotions within Canada that people may not even know about. So if you're hearing some of these for the first time, use the Google machine, look them up, and take a look at what they have to offer. A lot of them have stuff on YouTube. They have stuff online for you to check out. Who knows? Going and checking out some of the stuff from Canadian independent promotions, you could very well be seeing the next major star within the large companies and promotions that are within the world itself. Maybe we need to talk a little bit about some of those right now. Chris, what are some of the ones that come to mind for you?
Well, I'd be hard-pressed not to recognize one of Canada's greatest professional wrestlers and wish him an early pre-birthday, as his birthday is tomorrow, and that is one Bret the Hitman Hart. I think when it comes to Canadian pro wrestling, for a lot of us, he was the status. He is the benchmark to Canadian wrestlers, one of the best technicians of all time, one of the best wrestling minds of all time. And he really brought a lot of notoriety to Canada, especially with that huge feud with Canada going up against the US in just the late 90s with the WWF at the time. And then you have to look just within that same household and his younger brother Owen, who I think absolutely inspired a lot of people, as you see today. And then that trickles down to their niece Natalia, who is still representing the Hart family in pro wrestling. And then shout out to her husband TJ Wilson, Tyson Kidd, and then Harry Smith as well. Just people that are still holding that traditional Hart name, clearly one of the more infamous wrestling names. And then I think I'd be hard pressed not to mention the Rougeau family as well, as they might be the two more famous Canadian wrestling families out there.
OMD.
That's exactly where I was going to go. I mean, really, for me, the Mountie Jacques Rougeau was my first true introduction to a Canadian wrestler. I had known of Bret Hart and the Hart Foundation, but didn't know anything really about their background until after Bret went solo.
Okay.
So for me, the Mountie was that first true Canadian. And then you had the Rougeau brothers, and even a guy like PCO who has undergone multiple character changes throughout his career and repackaged himself to accomplish everything he has, including getting blacklisted to making that comeback that he has.
Right. Yeah. You talk about guys that are able to change things with who they are. We got to mention Chris Jericho in there then. A guy who's been able to just take on a whole bunch of different monikers, work with them, make them something. The man I 100% believe could take a pile of dung and make it popular. He's just so good at being able to do that. But some of the ones that, over the years that I learned were Canadian that I didn't know for a while kind of shook me a little bit. Later on in years, finding out that like Dino Bravo was Canadian. Getting to find out that Roddy Piper was Canadian. Then you get names on there that you already knew were Canadian, like the Chris Jerichos, right? Like Crazy Steve or like Scott D'Amore, right? And you already knew because they portrayed it and you just knew it. Christian, Edge, they were very, very proud, those two, to be able to say that they came from Canada and made their way through. I have a list here of different wrestlers. Rick Martel is one that I did not know for the longest time was Canadian. And that blew me away. I've known today and I've known before today, but just watch it back then, especially with like Roddy Piper. Okay. He's being billed from being from Scotland, Ireland, from like over in that area, right? Like you wouldn't think you would fully believe that he came from Scotland,
right? How about another one? And I'm going to go with a very, very big throwback, and I'm going to go to the original Gorgeous George.
Okay,
who was Canadian, coming from the Yukon. Believe it or
not. You cannot believe that he came from Canada.
Right?
Any names, Parrish, that you learned about that were Canadian that you would have never thought to have been Canadian?
Well, stay in like the more recent of times when you're learning more about some of the common people, when Authors of Pain were out there and you knew that 50% of them were Canadian. That blew me away. I don't think necessarily like it would blow me away. I think, and if when it comes to Canada and Canadian workers, there seems to be a trend with the style that they work. And that translates very well to, say, the WWFs, the WWEs, the WCWs. And that's more of that storytelling technician. So if somebody happened to be more of the technical side of wrestlers, I'd be like, yeah, they're Canadian. But I mean, you kind of named it right there. Rick Martel, that was the one, because he was somebody that when I was introduced to him, you didn't really see him wrestle the matches. You saw more of the segments, the promos with elegance and all that. And, maybe he was wrestling Shawn Michaels for Sensational Sherry's.
Right.
And right, like you're not seeing the technical classics, but you're seeing those dramatic storylines with romantic angles per se. So it just, that one always blew my mind, like, and still kind of blows my mind to this day, that there is so much diversity with Canadian born wrestlers.
Right.
But one who I did not know for the longest time was actually Gail Kim. Until you kind of get more of the internet and you kind of take that search, Gail Kim was one that blew me away, because to me, just screamed American, or potentially somebody that came from more of a Asian background, right?
Right. Yeah.
But then when you kind of filter in the fact, from Toronto, which is a very cultural area that has a lot of different ethnicities to it, it makes sense. And a good friend of mine, Ron Hutchinson, also happened to be, somebody who trained them. But I'll throw one that also blows my mind. If you remember Kazarni.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
To see those weird promos about being the carnival kind of clown that comes out of there, and you see those weird promos on SmackDown for a brief second, and then you realize, oh, Canadian. You're like,
Right.
that the guy that has a few, maybe a 9-inch nail loose from the box.
Right.
Yeah, that guy likes his maple syrup.
Yeah.
He is a guy that has actually performed here in Sault Ste. Marie.
Yeah.
Long before he was Kizarny. And I know I've had the opportunity to see him live. Carl, I'm not sure if you were there or not.
I was not.
Um,
Yeah, for that one, I was not.
But another guy that really surprised me when I found out he was Canadian was Earthquake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mr. John Tenta. Yeah, I was not aware for the longest time either. And Parrish, I mean, that just kind of goes to what you were talking about there, right? Like the Canadians kind of have their own style, but with John, with Earthquake, you didn't see that style. It was something totally different. So being able to find out that he was Canadian was definitely a shock to a lot of different people.
Yeah, and what's also like just amazing is just how much, even in the Attitude Era, in the eras since, just how much Canadian representation there's been too. And like, we're not even talking about just men. We've talked a lot about the men wrestlers, but when we talk about some of the women wrestlers of the time, we're talking about, like I said, the Gail Kims. Obviously, Trish Stratus screams. Natalya screams. Yeah. But then if you remember, like somebody like Aaliyah, you're looking at Santino Marella and his daughter Ariana Grace, also Canadians, right? Like people that you may not know or Canadian, but very much are. And then you're looking at just some of the crop coming up. Like it's an absolute amazement just how many Canadian women now are gracing the ring.
Oh yeah.
And absolutely thriving. We look at Gigi Ray coming out of Ring of Wrestling down there, just won their championship too. We have Chelsea Green blowing up the circuit with WWE now. Just, you never thought, first ever women's United States championship goes to the honor of a Canadian girl. Like,
oh yes.
Let's not forget, even before the Trishes and before all of that, there was Luna Vachon.
Yeah.
Right? The daughter of Paul the Butcher Vachon.
Yeah. And we talk about wrestling families. How dare we not mention the Vachon family?
Right?
Because I don't know if Canadian wrestling would thrive if you didn't have those families. It's very. I remember going to a Cauliflower Alley Club, and Stone Cold Steve Austin was the main event award guy, and the one person who speaks up because he is bored because Jim Ross takes 45 minutes to introduce him. Steve Austin does a 5-minute thing and then does like a 40-minute Q&A with everyone because he didn't care about talking about himself. And then Mad Dog Vachon just gets up. I have a question. I want to know, when is the damn finish?
Yeah. Right?
And this is the Stone Cold Steve Austin of all people.
Yeah.
Right?
But the
that's
fear
yeah.
from the Vachon family, how can we forget?
Oh no, not definitely. Like there's no forgetting at all, and I mean it's thankfully we've been able to get the WWE and they've curated all of this that they've acquired, and it's still out there and available to be able to watch, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. You talked about the females within Canada and professional wrestling. For myself, a few notable ones are going to be Maryse Hulette. We're looking at as well Angelina Love, one of my favorites from TNA. Her work with Velvet Sky, Angelina Love, a Canadian as well.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing. And then we look at people that maybe you haven't heard of this person. If you haven't, please go and look this person up. But Tracy Brooks is another name that you should take a look at. And Melissa Coates as well. And I mean, the two females right there that maybe don't get enough shine, that definitely need a little bit more, I think. Go and look them up too, because just the Canadian professional wrestling scene has always been hot, but we kind of always are put onto the back burner to the United States.
Right.
Wrestlers
And I mean,
that are out there.
Even now with Australia becoming that new hotbed. But another young lady who is on her way up and coming just won the Loot International Grand Prix, and she has wrestled here as well, Zandra Lee.
Yeah.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, please go and check her out. She is absolutely incredible.
And let's not forget Beth's comment over there.
Mhm.
When
Yeah,
we go
please.
back to people that couldn't believe was Canadian. A lot of people, even still to the current day, still can't believe Jinder Mahal is from Calgary, Alberta.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, it just happens to be it. But I mean, the Singh family is also a very much a Canadian wrestling family as well. And whether it was Tiger Ali Singh, if people remember him, Canadian, by the way,
Yes.
absolutely just phenomenal. And then one of his favorite tag teams were the Fabulous Rougeaus. Yeah, like, and they called themselves the American Boys. Like, that's also like a thing. A lot of Canadian wrestlers, especially in the 80s and prior, would use the American trademark to help their status, because sometimes being Canadian wasn't enough. As you're kind of alluding to, it gets overshadowed by the great red, white, and blue.
Yeah. Let's make sure that we're not overshadowing anything on this show, at least. We've talked a lot about different people that were from Canada within the professional wrestling world. I think I want to kind of shift to two different things here. I want to shift to what you guys see as maybe one of the greatest moments in professional wrestling history to happen on Canadian soil.
Well, I gotta say, it's when I won that bad boy right there. No, I mean, I'm just kidding. I mean, OMD, you were there. John Cena turns heel for the only time in pro wrestling.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. For me, one of the greatest moments, and I'm not a fan of the guy, but hearing Bret Hart defeats Ric Flair at a house show in Saskatoon for the World Heavyweight Championship.
And did that continue to be recognized?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
See?
That was Bret Hart's first championship reign, and it was at a house show.
History. Right there. That's what we're looking for. Something that maybe people didn't really know about. That's beautiful. Chris.
I was going to say one of pro wrestling's biggest moments, biggest showdowns happened on Canadian soil, and that was Icon versus Icon. The Rock versus Hulk Hogan. WrestleMania 18. You saw one of the most iconic stare downs to ever grace a pro wrestling ring. It might have been larger than maybe even Hulk Hogan and Andre at that time. Maybe not by how many people were sitting there, but the views, the recognizable moment that was, the amount of people watching now. And that's a moment that is going to be in wrestling history from forever.
Yeah.
It was an absolute insane moment. Whether you were a fan of either one or not at all, you cannot take away how big that moment was and what it really means to the pro wrestling world.
No, you can't. And the bizarro world, because Hogan was going in representing the NWO as the heel, The Rock, the people's champion, going in as the babyface. And of course, us Canadians, we love to cheer the heel. It was bizarro world, and it completely flipped the entire match.
Yeah, let's cheer the man that used to come out to the song Real American, but let's not cheer the guy that once played in the Canadian Football League.
Right?
I mean, it was Calgary, so I kind of get it, but
You want to talk about Bizarro World? Okay, Jerry the King Lawler has coined Toronto as Bizarro World because of this situation, not the one that you spoke of, but because we had in SummerSlam 2004, the Rabid Wolverine was booed by fans, which was like unheard of back then. We had Chris Benoit taking on Randy Orton. Chris Benoit was booed by some fans then. The match was taking place in Toronto, right? Chris Benoit, Canadian. You would figure that we would be going for the Canadian inside of that matchup, but Bizarro World happened as per Jerry the King Lawler. And this notable moment is a moment in history that I was able to be a part of, where Randy Orton won by RKO and became the youngest world heavyweight champion in WWE history at the age of 24. That for me, just it's always going to stick in my mind because I was there. It was something that I was able to be a part of. Chris Best is saying that the first televised Royal Rumble in 1988 was actually done in Hamilton, Ontario. And let's not cheer the guy that has Canadian citizenship in The Rock through his dad. Yes. Mm-hmm. And then, Chris is saying that everything at SummerSlam 04 was booed in one way or another that night. True. I want to go to 2006 as well, where again, in Toronto, Unforgiven 2006, we had an amazing matchup going on. The final chapter of the Trish Stratus and the Lita rivalry at that time. Another huge historic piece of professional wrestling history that happened on Canadian soil. Tears flowing all around after Trish applied the sharpshooter on Lita. That was enough. That was enough. It was amazing.
And I think we have to talk about the In Your House, the Stampede, when we saw the Hart Foundation triumph. I believe was over Ken Shamrock, the Legion of Doom, Goldust and Steve Austin. I think that was the 5.
Yep.
I know Best will probably correct me if I'm
100%
wrong.
it was. I have it on my screen right now.
Perfect.
Yep.
But the crowd, that atmosphere, that whole show was, and I remember because I was scheduled to go to Raw the next day at Edmonton, where we saw all the Hart Foundation wear Oiler jerseys, and I was, yeah. Unfortunately, I had a situation where I had to be in Ottawa for it instead, but it was one of those moments that I remember just being proud to be Canadian, because Canada was featured on such a high level. It was one of the biggest moments. So anytime those moments happen on Canadian soil, they felt large.
Right.
But then when you take back to that insane crowd in Calgary that night for that match, it was absolutely just nuts. And then you see the whole family in the ring afterwards, and then who would have thought you would have seen a couple future tag team champions, future women's champion, and one of maybe the most respected women's wrestlers of all time in Natalia, well beyond her years. It was pretty wild. And then just to give you a few Edmonton moments that were crazy that I was able to see, we saw Mick Foley against Randy Orton, one of the most barbaric hardcore matches that to this day Randy Orton and Mick Foley said absolutely helped their careers like you wouldn't understand. It really matured Randy Orton as a performer, and now he thrives as a 14-time world champion. And we also saw Mick Foley legitimize his legacy as the best hardcore wrestler that made it large. And then we also can say, hey, where were you when the fan came and pushed a ladder during a Rob Van Dam and Eddie Guerrero ladder match? Well, that was Edmonton, and it was absolutely great to see, especially when Eddie Guerrero punches the living soul out of this fan for doing so.
Yeah.
Sometimes all the moments can't be bad, but I'll give you one that makes me proud to be Canadian. And that was sadly the night Jerry Lawler had his heart attack. It was in Montreal.
Yeah.
And one of the best stories was in Canada. You have to have EMTs at all sporting events. If that was not a thing, Jerry Lawler would not be here today.
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes to show how much health is a priority in Canada. And because of that decision, Jerry Lawler is still able to tell his story.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Best, who is, off on assignment, as we said, he is making the time to come and talk with us today. He says when HBK had to give up the IC title, the Intercontinental Championship, to Dean Douglas, only for him to lose it to Razor Ramon, it happened at In Your House in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Again, another big notable thing that happened, right? Like that was, Shawn Michaels having to give up this is something that you would just never believe. He's Shawn Michaels, one of the greatest of all time. You never would think that he would have to just give something up, but that history happened on Canadian soil.
Is that the infamous "I lost my smile" moment?
I believe that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
And it's just wild to see some of these amazing moments that Canada was able to not only hold proudly, but also be a part of, and just to show you like how much Canada really does impact a lot of the wrestling scene. You talked about Randy Orton becoming the youngest pro wrestling champion in WWE history, and that happened on Canadian soil. Well, he just happened to beat the record of somebody who, because of their health system, now resides in Canada, and that's one Brock Lesnar.
Right.
And Brock Lesnar has taken that so far that he even fought his last UFC fight with the Canadian flag on his back.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy to see that. And yeah, Bess is talking about The Rock having Canadian citizenship. I believe Brock Lesnar and his family are going in that route as well.
Yes.
And now his kid, his son, has been drafted in hockey in Canada, the Western Hockey League, that is part of the Canadian Hockey League, the CHL. Like, it's just an absolutely amazing story to know that some of the best American families are now choosing to be a part of the Canadian culture moving forward. Just shows you how amazing Canada is in so many different ways.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't touch on one of the biggest events to happen in Canada, and that is the Montreal Screwjob.
Yeah.
I know for me, I popped when it happened because I was a bigger Shawn Michaels guy than I was a Bret Hart guy. Carl, you were there when we met the Hebners.
Yep.
And I did get to tell Earl I support 97.
Yeah.
Is it also wrong? I am wearing Shawn Michaels shorts right now.
Oh, hey, everybody's got their, their favorites, and you got to support your favorites for sure. Just like each and every one of you can support your favorite shows here on Turnbuckle Studios. You can go to carlcarafel.redbubble.com. You can find yourself some merchandise to show your support and rep the show that you enjoy from this network. We've touched on Canadian professional wrestlers. We've touched on notable moments that have happened within Canada. I think the last thing that I want to touch on for us here tonight is going to be our favorite, let's say, professional wrestling match featuring a Canadian. Now, it doesn't have to be on Canadian soil, anything like that. Your Canadian wrestler and their match. You guys got one, or do you?
I can give you 5 off the top of my dome.
Okay, give me 2.
Okay, and that is Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, WrestleMania 10. And then I'll even do you another one, the main event to WrestleMania 12, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, the best Iron Man match to ever happen.
Yeah. OMD is going to take a minute. I'll give you some time. Okay.
I think probably my personal favorite, I'm going to go back, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Royal Rumble. Okay. That was a master class.
Yeah, 100% it was.
I had Benoit another one, and it was against Kurt Angle at the Royal Rumble. That technical prowess match. If you're a wrestler growing up, and this has nothing to do with the person of him, but if you're a wrestler and you want to study a technical match, go check out those two. Mm-hmm. Anything that involves Kurt Angle, Benoit, or William Regal, that Brian Pillman Memorial Show I'm going to also put out, those are matches to study.
Mr. Best weighing in as well. He says that 2 matches he can easily say. Number 1 is Bret versus Shawn, WrestleMania 12. And the second one is Bret versus Owen, Steel Cage, SummerSlam 1994. again, both amazing matches that featured Canadian. That just that Brett Owen matchup had so much story and value to it that if you weren't invested in that, there was no point in you even watching professional wrestling. Like, that's how good it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I can give you another match, and I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
go back. A couple of Canadian guys were pioneers in this match. Edge and Christian, TLC with the Hardys and the Dudleys.
Yeah. Another great one for sure.
Another one that I loved, I just watched it just the other day, but it's an old episode of Monday Night Raw, and it featured Owen Hart one-on-one against the 1-2-3 Kid.
Oh,
That
that far.
That fast pace, that technical, but you're mixing the technical with the high flying. Styles are absolutely just going. And here's a beautiful throwback. But how about Bret Hart versus Bob Backlund, the I Quit match?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that 100%. That was one of mine, for sure. I was a Bret Hart fan, right? Okay, I'm Canadian. He's Canadian. Cool. I got to support, right? But I was also a very big Bob Backlund fan. Very big Bob Backlund fan. For a little bit of time, I used a modified chicken wing as a finisher for me when I was wrestling, all because of Bob Backlund. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because 100% I was going to as well. Chris is saying, or Chris Mr. Best is saying, one highly underrated match that he loves is Owen versus HBK for the WrestleMania 12 title shot that happened at the February 1996 In Your House. I will be honest, I've had concussions, so that's one that I don't remember.
Yeah. I do remember that because there was that concussion angle that they had with Shawn Michaels at one point, and it was because Owen Hart did the Enziguri, and I remember he did the Enziguri in that match, and we had Mr. Perfect on commentary going, paging Dr. Unger. I will always remember that play call in my life. I also want to shout out this. Only one time in pro wrestling history has a tag team match main evented, like a tag team title match main evented a WrestleMania any night. 2 Canadians came out with the titles, and that was Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn.
Okay. Huh.
And if you want a modern day match with an absolute beauty of a Canadian, well, then go back and check out Roman Reigns versus Sami Zayn right after the Royal Rumble in San Antonio. I believe it was in Montreal. I think it was Backlash or Elimination Chamber, one of the two. Those two guys had one of the best matches I've seen. You knew Sami Zayn was not going to win, but that was completely thrown out, that entire match, because he is that good at absolutely making you feel that he is always there in a fight, making you believe that he does have a shot, even when you've counted him out 10 times over. Sami Zayn makes you believe he might just be, in my eyes, one of the best at that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a Canadian boy.
For me, I'll throw 2 more out there for everyone when it comes to a Canadian and favorite matches. I saw this one a little later in years. Okay, again, I was born in 1981. This matchup actually happened in 1983 at the very first Starrcade. We had Greg the Hammer Valentine versus Roddy Piper in a dog collar matchup. That was at Starrcade Flair for the gold. 100%. I just like major spots that were happening inside of this matchup, you know, attacking Piper's ear with the dog collar and the chain and everything. It all just felt like so real to find out that, yeah, an eardrum was legitimately broken. Wild. And to believe that it was, because it was, but they made it believable.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. And then maybe a comedic one that kind of happened. We're at a WrestleMania. We're talking the Hollywood Backlot Brawl is another one. I just watched this one like about 2 weeks ago again because I love it so much. The inclusion of a white SUV, a white Bronco. Yeah, if you don't know, the O.J. Simpson case was very big at that time. It was like front page news, still prevalent in that day. And the WWE used that to their advantage with this backlot brawl happening at WrestleMania 12. It was just so good. And to see Piper, you know, a veteran in the business at that time, legend in the business, still be able to do all the things that he had done in that matchup, I'm sure invigorated a lot of people. Yeah.
I mean, to list the amount of matches that Canadians were in that absolutely just made us giddy as wrestling fans. I mean, you can go on for 158 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know that number, how dare you? Because this is the one day of the year that in the White North, the Great White North, it's not Rusev Day. It's weird.
Right? It's the only day that it's
the
not
only day.
Rusev
It's
Day.
the only day.
Yeah. I am so happy and thankful that I can be joined by my Canadian brothers for this episode on Canada Day to talk about Canadian professional wrestling. As you know, we mentioned earlier, full circle for Canada. Yes, we started out with Maple Leaf Wrestling. We make our way now today to Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling. It's just an amazing thing to be able to see. It came full circle, and I absolutely love that. Just like this show has come full circle, and we are making our way to the end of this show. If you guys have not as of yet, we would love for you to hit the thumbs up, the like, the share, the hearts, the emoji, whatever it is. Share it out with your friends. Subscribe to whatever channel you are watching it on right now, and stick with us as we continue to bring you professional wrestling and gaming and beyond on this channel here of Turnbuckle Studios. And if you want to know more about Turnbuckle Studios, you can take a look at our website, turnbucklestudios.org. turnbucklestudios.org. You can go to that website, click on each person's individual picture. It'll take you to their socials where you can follow them and check out everything that they're doing on the world of the internet itself. We have got shows pretty much every day going on here with Turnbuckle Studios and the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program. If you are wanting to become part of the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program, go to the website. There's an email address right there where you can send us an email and we can talk about how you can become part of the affiliation program, do some streaming, or help out in whatever capacity you are available to do so. You don't have to just be an on-screen personality when it comes to the affiliation program. We got a whole bunch of different things. Whatever you are interested in helping out with, we are here to help you, help us. Yeah. I do want to make sure that everybody knows that we here are fully Canadian. Yes, we have said it before, but I'm going to make sure that we say it again. We are Canadian, and we are very happy and proud to be Canadian. Full circle for Canada, full circle for Turnbuckle Studios, full circle for each and every one of us. Want to leave you guys with a little something here. If you have not seen what we have available, take a look at this.
Turnbuckle Studios and the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program bring you the week of streams. All times are in Eastern Time. Monday nights you get the Locker Room Breakdown at 7 p.m., followed by the Raw Patrol at 8 p.m. Tuesday brings you the flagship show, Turnbuckle Talk, at 8:05 p.m. Wednesday we play games with the PlayStation Showcase at 8 p.m. Thursday we got total non-stop action with Brace for Impact at 8 p.m. Friday we game again with Unleashed, the Jessica Wilde story at 7 p.m. Following the game, join us for the SmackDown Security Detail at 8 p.m. The weekend brings you Saturday Night Gaming at 8 p.m. On Sunday be sure to catch the Chris Parrish podcast at 12:15 p.m. followed by the Boar's Nest at 8 p.m. Be part of the shows and join the chat every day.
And there you have it, a quick, comprehensive look at everything that we can give here with Turnbuckle Studios. For Chris Parrish, for OMD, and for myself, Carl Carafel, thank you for joining us here today. Happy Canada Day. And remember, everyone, the world's a scary place. Take care of each other.
Flagship show setting the tone. In the world of wrestling we stand alone. With news and reviews we lead the way. Turnbuckle Talk every day. Turnbuckle Talk every day.